Hello chess friends and welcome to your Out of Chess channel and welcome to a truly amazing game that I think has again great theoretical value. Welcome to a beautiful gameplay by Rebel against the most powerful chess engine in the world, Stockfish 17, in a crazy London system that I found on the official and beautiful computer chess rating list website. And I've been asked how many times where you're finding these games. I usually check them out, as I said, on this computer chess rating list website, shortened CCRL. Please check out the website. It's really a great one. You have all of the engines that are performing in the AI chess, where you can download all of the PGNs that they played. You can also sort them out by openings. If you're bothered maybe by some opening by the Ruy Lopez, Caro-Kann, I don't know, Sicilian, you can find basically any Sicilian that's possible. So I think it's very beautiful and spectacular website in which you can learn something, but you can also find very spectacular games. And not only Stockfish games, there are also other top engines that are playing great chess. You know, the engines are simply better than us humans, and you can download really many great games in some openings, as I mentioned, that are maybe bothering you. And I've sorted out now this one, and because the London system is still sort of an unexplored opening in which many things can happen, and probably many of you are bothered by the London system, but many of you are maybe not finding a good continuation, maybe not good responses to the London system. This approach that you see now here by the fish is really a powerful one. In my opinion, it's even one of the best responses that you can play against the London system. So that's why I've decided to show this one. It's maybe not the most spectacular and tactical game that you see now by Stockfish, but I think again that it's a great game, a great game of beautiful theoretical value. So let's see now what happened with white. The Rebel engine opened with move d4, d5 by the fish. So knight to f3, knight to f6, and now after bishop to f4, we have now the London system. Now my recommendation is here to play the move c5, immediately challenging the center. If something like d takes c5 happens, you can still play queen to a5 and recapture the pawn. So here, that's why Rebel cements the position in the center of the board. And usually the London system player wants to have the setup, I don't know, c3, knight from b to d2, bishop to e2, h3 castling, and build a slow attack, especially then later maybe with an outpost on e5 to somehow occupy the center, and then maybe with the progressive bishop do something also on this side of the board. So it's an unpleasant opening, because in the beginning you don't have so many chances. You have to simply accept that your opponent will probably try to do a setup. So that's why I like this approach by the fish. Here from move e3, you can just continue development with knight to c6, and now from move c3 you see the common grip that white is building on dark squares, and now Stockfish is meeting this idea immediately with the ultra aggressive queen to b6. And what should you do now? There are many options that you can play. You can of course play queen to c2, queen to b3. Here in the continuation, queen to b3 has been played by Rebel, and now Stockfish plays an interesting c4. This is now my recommendation. That's also Stockfish of course playing here. c4 forces immediately a reaction, and notice in this whole approach by black still have the flexibility to place your bishop, to your light square bishop somewhere. That's why I pointed out now this bishop's activity still that's present. Usually in some of these lines, sometimes the bishop gets a little bit locked. Not in this line. You see the bishop is there. The bishop will come out maybe to g4, to f5, and then when you play e6, then this other bishop can also breathe. So I think it's a beautiful game of really nice piece activity. The knights are already on natural squares. What I mean about natural squares, usually the knights are supposed to be on f6, on c6. These are in the beginning the most active squares that the knights can occupy, and the queen is still active. You didn't lose any activity. I think very beautiful approach. So now Rebel can take, of course, here the queen on b6, but it doesn't bring you so much because black is, I would say, slightly better in this position. Then you take, and the issue is now b5 is coming. Even if you try a3, then b4 is coming again. Even if you try c takes b4, then of course knight takes b4 could happen, and you cannot grab the knight because your rook is hanging here on the a file. So when I watch now, for instance, this position, this hasn't been played in the game, but when you check out now the database in this position, only winning games I see by black and also drawish outcomes. So it's, I think, a perfect opening for black here to reach such an outcome. Look at this, the evaluation is also in black's favor. I think this is not something that white wants to get in the early stage of the opening. So here from c4, that's why queen to c2. Rebel tries now to keep the queens on the board, but now comes this very interesting bishop to f5. You cannot pick up the bishop because then you lose the pawn. And surprisingly, I see also one game in the database in which actually white took the bishop on f5, but now nothing can be done. You have to play strange moves like knight from f to d2. Now you play just e6, kick away the queen, you capture this one, and white lost the exchange. Black will also pick up this one. This bishop is still having here great activities, can maybe also occupy the b2 weakness. So nothing spectacular gained here for white. Actually, in this position, black is completely winning. So that's why queen to c1 forces another passive move by black, and by white, and the queen is a little bit misplaced now. The queen is not really on the optimal square. It's only stuck to the defense of the single pawn on b2. Why doesn't white play the move queen to d2? Then you're taking the square for the knight. So suddenly white's position gets a little bit cramped here after queen to c1. Stockfish continues with the normal here idea, knight to h5, hitting now the bishop. The bishop drops back, and now a calm e6. And that's what I meant. The bishop is out, the light square bishop is out, this bishop has still a great activity, the knight is at least attacking the bishop, this knight is well placed, the queen maybe needs a little bit improvement here because it's not so dangerous anymore there, because we're trying maybe to go for the b5 b4 plan to put more pressure there. But so far a great position for black, and actually when you see also the bar, black's position should be slightly better in this setup. So here knight from b to d2 finally by a Rebel, and Stockfish continues now with knight takes g3. Why not? We're continuing the game with the bishop pair. We have now h takes g3, and now h5, and this move I see has only been played one time in chess history, Mirzoev against Oshchak Shalai. Surprisingly, believe me or not, the greatest chess player of all time in this particular position, Magnus Carlsen, played the move h6 instead of h5, and it led into very, very tricky game for both sides. Here Carlsen played with the black pieces against Gata Kamsky, really a legend of the sport, but Gata Kamsky found this beautiful idea to reroute the bishop and get rid of at least this bishop on f5, and now e4 was even possible. Now after knight takes e4, the position was pretty equal, where these knights are very, very dangerous now to handle for black. Eventually Magnus Carlsen won the game, but the engine says there is a better approach instead of h6. Here's my Stockfish and engine home suggests that you should go with the move h5. The move h5 is important because it's not allowing in some lines the move g4. So now the bishop and the pawn in h5 are controlling the g4 score. You see now why is it so important, because now in this particular position Rebel tried the ultra aggressive e4 to break and enter in the center of the board. Stockfish takes, and now after knight takes c4, that was Rebel's solution here to somehow split this pawn chain that Stockfish built, of course, on this side of the board. Stockfish had a huge advantage on the queen side with this progressive c4 pawn. Now when the knight came on c4 and Stockfish has to, of course, step back, Rebel had this idea to play now the move g4, and if h5 would not have been played, then white wouldn't maybe play this move. You could maybe try knight to g5 here instead of g4 in order to maybe go for the e4 pawn, but this move can be easily met with f6. Now maybe again g4 takes, and then queenside castling is, I think, again a beautiful position here for black with the bishop pair, with the beautiful activity, maybe later with the progressive plan e5 to break and enter in the center of the board. When the position gets open in the center of the board, I think it's a perfect setup then for the bishop pair. Look at this with e5, I don't know, e5, d takes e5, and then even ideas like rook to d1 are working just just one tiny little tactic that's possible, but I don't think that, again, white wants to reach this kind of a position. So that's why for queen to c7 and g4, instead of knight to g5, here that Rebel played, Stockfish's answer was bishop to g5, knight to e5 here by Rebel, going again for the light with bishop, and now a beautiful move here by the fish, rook to h6. Because we saw recently that there is this tension on the h file, so if something clears, then the rook could be hanging. Now Stockfish just lifts the rook, and now the rook is finally supported. But with this move, it's a risky move, I would say. Stockfish, I think, lost the privilege of castling, which could be necessary maybe on the king side. Now there is maybe a possibility to castle on the queen side, but it's still risky because there, I think, white has a better position. White has a majority there. You see, there is a 4 versus 2 situation when it comes to pawns on the queen side. So basically with rook to h6, okay, one problem solved, but another maybe is coming here for black. Now black is maybe even staying longer with the king in the center. So crazy position all over the board. Let's see now how Rebel continued. Rebel continues with knight to c6, gets rid of the knight, and now finally b takes c6. Because if, for instance, queen takes c6 happens, then again knight to e5 with the fork against the bishop, and the queen is coming. So Stockfish tried to avoid that with the move b takes c6, but now we see the idea about Rebel's move. When b takes c6 happens, I'm not sure if black is ever going to be castling anymore on this side of the board. The light squares are too vulnerable here. The pawn stone could come here on this side of the board. So basically, black's king is now stuck in the center. But the good part, of course, for the fish is here that the fish still has the bishop pair and still has here a powerful pawn majority on this side of the board, has here a 5 versus 2 situation. So Stockfish is, of course, trying to make progress there. And after queen to e3, here Stockfish protects now the pawn, bishop to e2, and now Stockfish simply pushes the pawn further. It's not losing any material now anymore in the game. We have now queenside castling by Rebel, and now bishop to e7, knight to e5, beautiful square for the knight, but this move can be met immediately with f6. What should you do? If you try here knight to g4 to keep maybe the knight active in the game, then there is this problem. Bishop to g4, and then f5. You step back, and then bishop to d6 with the threat of bishop to f4, creating this X-ray attack against the queen and the king. So black has this idea that should be not forgotten, of course, by white. You could maybe, I don't know, step back, but then again the queen gets attacked. You step back here to this square, but then maybe we can push the position further. So tricky stuff here that Stockfish is already preparing. So that's why for move f6, instead of knight to g4, Rebel tried knight to c4. Stockfish plays now rook to d8, includes now the last piece into the attack, and now finally b4, trying to do something, of course, on this side of the board because white is better here. But it's also risky to, I don't know, to weaken the king like this. Maybe I don't know, a better choice was to play g4 to somehow do something on this side, at least stop the attack without weakening the structure. Rebel tried to be aggressive here with the move b4 and then maybe a4, but now Stockfish continues, of course, the attack on this side of the board. We have now the move g3, rook to h8, and now knight to d2. If you play g takes h4, then g takes h4 leads now into a pass pawn situation where black has the supported pass pawn, and with the queen support, with the bishop support, maybe later also with this bishop support, this pawn could be almost impossible to stop. So that's why knight to d2 here by Rebel. Stockfish continues now with a5. Very important moment, because now when knight to d2 happened, the knight is not controlling anymore the square. And now a3. We have now h3. Stockfish continues again with this pass pawn. We have now knight to e4 and now king to f7. And that's the way how Stockfish secured now the king. The king is actually perfectly fine there. White will have to also weaken the structure somehow in order to make some kind of an attack against the king, maybe with moves like, I don't know, c4 d5. But if you play that, then again we are weakening your own king. So really unpredictable position, I would say. In human chess, I think the outcome would be anything here: winning for white, winning for black, drawish outcome. So, but my Stockfish engine told me values this position as 0.8 in black's favor. So let's see now how Stockfish is making something out of this position. So g4, bishop to g3, now bishop to c4. Look at this dangerous bishop, and now Stockfish plays a beautiful move, king to g7. Simply steps back from the defense of the bishop on e6. Stockfish says, take it out. I don't want to be just too defensive. Now my king is perfectly fine there, and still I have opportunities to maybe play something like a takes b4, and then maybe occupy the b file, occupy the a file, and also put more pressure against white's king. So we have now bishop takes e6, of course, here by Rebel, but now a2 here by Stockfish. Stockfish simply pushes the pawn further. We have now bishop to f5. If you try knight to g3 to get your knight closer to maybe this pawn, then there is this problem of a takes b4, and then again bishop to d6, the move that we have discussed earlier with this extra idea. You can maybe try, I don't know, knight to f5, bishop to f5, if it's bishop to f5, but then the game is lost. If you step back here, maybe with your king to b1, or you cannot even step back to b1 because of the bishop, maybe to b2, but then bishop takes g3 and something like this. Then the rooks are coming here on this side of the board, so rook to e8 could happen here, rook from d to e8, pinning the bishop to the queen. Again, a messy position here for white. So that's why after h2, bishop to f5 has been played now by Rebel, trying to get rid of the key defender of light squares in front of black queen, which is of course the light square bishop. Stockfish takes, Rebel takes, and now finally a takes b4. We have now c takes b4, and now Stockfish continues with rook to e8. And this move is brilliant because again it's threatening the move bishop to d6, where you cannot take of course the bishop, then the queen is hanging, and then with the same plan to play the move bishop to d6 and then bishop to f4, pinning now again the queen here and maybe trapping the queen. So here after queen to g3, Stockfish takes, releases now finally the pressure, which is a good choice by the fish because Stockfish wants to reach the fully endgame stage because of this very dangerous advanced pawn on the a file. Rebel takes, even if you try knight to g3, then again bishop to d6 with again bishop to f4 would be an idea for black. So that's why here f takes g3, Stockfish reroutes now the bishop, knight to c5 with an idea to hop with the knight here to e6, but now a beautiful move here by the fish, bishop to c7. And the issue is now knight to e6 immediately is actually not good, believe me or not. This is a perfect square for the knight, but black can immediately take and go also for this one. Even if you try to get the king closer, suddenly this pawns will be pushed here, and in one moment I think when one of these pawns is coming to the second rank, this is game over here for white. Although white is up the exchange, but these are two far advanced pawns, three connected pass pawns here we have on the king side with the support of the dark bishop, with the support of the rook. Obviously game over again here for white. So that's why for bishop to c7, Rebel tried another beautiful idea, d5. The only move that prolongs the game here for white. Stockfish took, now comes knight to e6, rook takes e6 again by the fish. The fish is saying, no, you're not going to hop with the knight there, I just take it. Stockfish goes now for this pawn, but now the difference is that Rebel included at least the rook into the attack, and Rebel has also here two connected pass pawns. But black's attack is much more advanced. That's the issue here. Stockfish continues now just with the normal g4. We have now king to d2. White is desperately trying now to get a new defender here towards the king side, but now Stockfish gets also the king closer, and now rook to e8. We have now rook to d7. Now the king is marching, and now after move f5, a4, king to h4, a5. Here we have bishop to e5, a6, and now Stockfish goes immediately with the pawn. Now the completely winning goal is of course to play king to h3 and then the move g2. We have now king to f3. Now comes this idea, or rook to d2 has to be played in order to stop here the move g2 for black. Stockfish now finally takes because now the rook is not protecting anymore the pawn, and now a rook to e2. But now rook to g7, another brilliant move, allowing here rook takes e5, but now This pawn is marching, Rebel is trying to defend his position somehow, but now first of all rook to g3. If you play king to f2, then there is this problem of this idea. First we have the promotion, okay, the rook can stop it, but then we go here, rook with rook to a3, then you have this beautiful possibilities to deliver checks on the second and maybe on the third rank. Maybe b5 could happen, but now just deliver check, go for this one, and even if the rook goes behind, then you play just a calm rook to b5, you deflect the rook from the defense of this square, and again it would be a completely winning endgame here for Stockfish. So that's why for rook to g3 instead of king to f2, here Rebel tried rook to f4, new check by Stockfish, Rebel takes, but now first of all Stockfish promotes here to queen, forces now the reaction. Now finally rook takes b4, and the issue is here, it is equal material, but it's a completely different story here. This rook is going behind, this rook is always stuck to the defense of the promotion of this one, and the main issue for white is here that the king is too far away from its own pawn. If this king would be somewhere here, then obviously it's a completely drawish position, because white would sacrifice the rook here, and then in one moment black would have to also sacrifice the rook, but not in this line. Stockfish goes simply behind, goes like this, delivers a new check, and now Stockfish here Rebel threatens some dangerous checks, but it's not working because Stockfish can still cover. Rebel tried to keep the rook on the board, but now after move here rook to a3 in this particular position, Rebel resigned. I'm not sure why even Stockfish played the move rook to a3 or rook to h6, pardon me. Maybe it was a glitch in the matrix, sort of. Here in this particular position, it's immediately valid as checkmate in 5. Here for black, maybe it was just a mistake by the organizer, who knows, but we can agree, I think, that this one is completely winning here for black. So amazing attack again by Stockfish against this beautiful London system. Really great approach with the black pieces. If you're bothered maybe by the London system, this is a perfect opening for you. I recommend it to you maybe to play this one, because it's, I think, easy to learn. You can repeat moves, you don't make common opening mistakes, you go for the activity, you go for the bishop pair, then you have the bishop pair, you're trying to do something. So I think really again a great theoretical game played by the most powerful chess engine in the world, by Stockfish 17. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. If you want to see some other beautiful spectacular position but also brutal tactical games, check out our commented chess games played by computer series here on my YouTube chess channel. Here's the link to the playlist, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.